Michael, did you even clap?
Yeah.
Oh.
We were just that much in sync.
Who's fucking barking, John?
Me.
That's my wife.
Go, shut her up. That's all we need.
I really was tempted for a second just to yell, "Shut the fuck up!"
Just some bitch popping off at the start of this thing, I tell you.
Right before I came in here.
Acceptable.
Right before I came in here, I'm literally walking in the door to get the mic set up, and she yells up, she's like, "Hey, did you see that picture today on Instagram of Phoebe Bridgers nude?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fap to it later." And she goes, "Could you literally..." No, never mind. And I was like, "No, finish your thought." She goes, "I was gonna say, could you literally use any other term but fapping?" And then I realized what a dangerous proposition that is to tell someone like you.
It is going to be the fappening from this point forward.
So I guess what I'd ask of you guys is, what word would you use instead of fap?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
you're asexual, so it doesn't count.
Michael's is a dimple pinch on the rocks, I believe, is his description. So
milking the snake,
jerking the gherkin, I guess, but that's too close. I wouldn't count that.
Do you actually have a gherkin? Is that a problem for you, or
no?
Then how is it too close to what?
Hey, Dad.
Jerking, like jerking off.
Hey, Dad. What's a gherkin?
It's a small peanut.
Oh, well, I have a gherkin.
It looks like a zucchini.
Oh, well, Shane, what are we? Why are we here?
It's
what are you good
like,
for?
It's just like Mama used to make, only smaller. The Keebler Elf Watkins.
Yes.
By the eternal, behold.
Behold.
It's the Disinformed podcast. I am Sergeant Hatred.
I am Captain Technology.
Wait, I thought I was Captain Technology.
That's right, you are. Now you can't scroll away from me, you little slimy fuck.
I think we need to start this all over.
Nope,
you are not Captain Technology, you
I am
dumbass.
Timothy Lone Cactus.
You are also not Timothy Lone Cactus. You are Dadicado. And you need to get on your new shit, my friend, because you didn't say Dadicado, he's not going to say butt cheese. So you fucked this whole thing up just from the start.
Here,
so now we have to start completely over and say, I'm Shane.
I'm Dadicado.
And I'm Michael?
There you go. Welcome, ladies and germaphobes. Happy to have you here for another clusterfuck of an episode.
True that.
If it makes you feel any better, Shane,
nothing makes me feel better. I live.
I'm alive.
That's enough.
When I was turning off the PlayStation last night, I did send Michael a friend request, and he did approve it. So another random off the cuff Becky's like, "Who the fuck is butt cheese 696969?" Which I said, there's faster ways to say 696969.
It is something that bears discussion, I feel.
Yeah, I would ask the same question if I saw that on someone's feed.
I mean, I get asked that. Let's see, my girlfriend asked that when we were trying to set up Jackbox.
How's it feel being a sex offender, by the way?
I mean, I gotta walk around and talk to people every couple of months, but other than that, it's fine.
I would think that, setting up the Jackbox is what got you into problems with the law in the first place.
Okay, do you guys know what Jackbox party games are?
It's the thing you can order after 2 a.m. from Jack in the Box.
You can get it with chicken or steak.
You can.
Close. So it's a party. They're party games, essentially.
Oh well, that's why she's a whore. Okay.
Ouch.
Whoa.
Whoa. But the cool thing about them is that you use your phone actually as the quote unquote controller.
This isn't getting any better.
How?
You're controlling her with the phone? That's
no. It's like it's like Mario Party, but instead of using a GameCube or Nintendo 64 controller,
penis.
Yes. No. Phone. Use your phone. You go onto a website and you use the phone.
MyFreeCams.com.
X-Hamster. Red tube.
Only. Yeah.
And then the party starts.
Yeah.
The meat beating with the Jackbox.
But anyway, I set it up for her family because we all wanted to play those games. Oh my god. But
So you're playing games with her family on the Jackbox.
it's
on
the
the
PlayStation.
record.
It's
so
on the PlayStation.
Oh,
I played
I
a
see.
game called Jackbox Party Games on the PlayStation 4. And in the top corner was my username.
Hey,
And
Michael,
I just hope that
I just
no one...
want to interject before you continue. You're going to need to wear a mask if you keep diving into China this frequently, so you're not protected right now, and I'm afraid you're not going to make it if you keep digging that hole that deep. You just
done.
need to stop.
And I'm Michael. This is the episode. All right, bye.
Oh, God. I despair for the quality of this conversation, if
So-
this is where we're starting.
As I have, it's like my job now is to talk Michael off of this ledge.
He's just holding his head in his hands now, so I
So-
mean, it's like his graduation ceremony.
I might have employment again, hopefully, maybe sometime by the end of the week or start of next week.
I was going to say, is that new bill where they can take out like the small business support loan thing help, or might be something to recommend
I
because they
don't
can use
know.
that. The way that it's structured, for those of you who are not looking at legal statutes these days, is that they can actually take out a loan that they do not then have to pay back as long as they prove that they are utilizing it for payment of their staff and utilities and the interest rate on their loan, like the mortgage for the place. So any small business can then file that as long as they prove that that is what they're spending the money on, and then they do not have to pay the loan back to the federal government.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the route that's going, but I think what we're trying to pivot to right now is curbside pickup, and online ordering only.
You have given my life purpose again.
So
It'll be the same thing as him getting sex workers. So, I mean, he's going to be completely used to the transaction.
Shane, I am so
yeah.
proud of you.
I see. I'm adjusting. I'm learning. I am adapting to this new environment where everyone
the tech.
is fucking nerfing the world.
Okay, I'm not going to get derailed. I'm going to finish this story.
Not if I have anything to
yeah,
say
right?
about it.
So I was in the shop yesterday for about 4 or 5 hours doing an actual hard inventory reset and going through and, you're counting everything. And
Is that what the kids call it these days?
Mhm.
Your hard inventory?
And while I was there, Dewan showed up to pick up some beer to take with him. And we had this beautiful, 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out of trying to eviscerate each other because we have so much pent up rage. And that's what I told him halfway through because I said something totally baseless. And I was like, oh man, that was a dick thing for me to say. I'm sorry. I'm just used to us having a certain amount of shit talking per week face to face, and we haven't seen each other. So I feel like I just want to bury you in insults right now.
Other people call that sexual tension, but continue.
Well, that being said, when Shane and I see you looking just so fresh and young,
You might want to wipe your camera off if you think he's looking young and fresh.
Yeah.
I have cabin fever.
I can tell.
Just give me 2 sticks, a rubber band, and I'll find a way to fuck it right now.
I will be changing your name from Dadicado to Beer Goggles by the end of this, apparently. Didn't know that's why you were drinking for so long, is that I'm actually fat and ugly, John. I don't know if you've noticed in being a band as long as we have.
Well,
He probably thinks I'm Brad Pitt with, chiseled abs and,
Speaking of pits, you feel beautiful on the inside, so that's all I care about.
Well, yeah, it's lucky. It's my asshole's a tube of circus peanuts by this point.
Well, we are having a relaxed day as far as the episode's concerned, right?
No.
We made some promises last week, and that's kind of the topic, right?
There is an argument to be said for the fact that none of our conversations ever have any point. I mean, so there's an argument to that. So yes, we could have no ballast and just be flying off the cuff, as it were.
I mean, we usually do, so...
Despite our best efforts.
We shoot from the hip around here, which could also be, porn idiom, depending upon who's talking. So,
Well, let me say then, Shane, are you comfortable sharing a story today? And I will also share one.
I am always comfortable sharing a story. It's whether or not you are comfortable receiving the story is going to be the question.
I will receive it, but I have a couple things. I don't have it written out, don't have an outline for the episode, but I do have things I wanted to talk about.
Okay, dive in.
Firstly, I finished Dark Tower 6.
Ooh.
Songs of Susanna. Song of Susanna, rather, sorry.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It was really refreshing to have like a 400-page, like just quick in and out. Like I finished it in a week, which is usually most like Wizard and Glass and Wolves of the Kala. Like those took me like a month to finish, just because I read for like maybe 30 minutes to an hour in the morning, and that's usually all I set aside for myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I texted you the other, or you were texting me about something the other day, and I was like, hey, I'll do that eventually, but I'm head deep right now. Like I can't. I'm not looking up until this is done. Oh, so good.
It's a wonderful sort of like the pace quickens rather rapidly through the course of that book, and you get an awful lot. And I mean, a part of being so daunted by it is the volume of the text that you have to go through, and I think it's somewhat dispiriting to look and be like, I'm only a quarter of the way in this book, and I'm 800 pages in right now. So yeah, I can understand the eating the elephant principle is really difficult, but yeah, that it's nice that he kind of gave you a quick burn to get through. Like I just finished reading The Running Man, which was a King published in the Bachman days. Yeah. And it was 370 pages or something, or 317, I forget. But I blitzed through it and was shocked. And it's one of those things by comparison. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not a 1,200 page book. I don't know why. It's like I don't even get up for it anymore.
Yeah. Do you guys, I was thinking about this earlier. It's kind of on the same topic that, like, so I've been like kind of like head down on King for so long. But I've always noticed when I go from like binge reading one author to reading something by someone else, that the first book that I read after, like breaking the succession, like I will just fucking demolish it, because the tone shift and like the voice change, like really just like,
it's the first day when you get your hall pass.
Yeah.
Just fuck everything that moves and decide, it's like, oh, I don't know why I was in this relationship in the first place. Right. I'm sorry, honey.
How about you, Michael?
What do you mean? Like a story?
I will kill myself right now on live camera. It's being recorded.
So you have obviously, read books and then gone to a different author and gone back.
Shit. Sorry, I was listening. I swear I was.
We lost him on Sex Worker again.
Oh my God. Those sex workers.
You're back in the Jack box, just Jack booting it.
I mean, I can't even think of a time when that happened. I read so infrequently. Like, I haven't really picked up books until King, so I don't have a good, fresh encounter or situation to base anything off of. Okay. For me, like, I guess it all depends on how hooked I am in the book. Like if I'm sunk head deep into it really quickly, then I'll just read it no matter what. Like I'll stop playing video games, I'll stop doing other things, and I'll read it. But there have been times where, like, I mean, it took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 times to get through Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring, because I just couldn't get past the damn hobbits at the very beginning. You
know what? I have never read The Lord of the Rings, and that is the primary reason. Is that I never leave the Shire when I start that book. I don't know if it's because of how long-winded that first, like, I think the prologue is super long-winded, like the history of hobbits, that by the end of it I'm like, is it all gonna be like this? Because if so, I am fucking out.
There's a lot of world building in Tolkien, and you do have to kind of get through the begats section in order to really get into the meat of the matter.
Yeah.
That being said, Kingslingers talks a lot about the parallels between Lord of the Rings and the Dark Tower. I mean, as Stephen King himself said in that preface multiple times, that he wanted to write his Lord of the Rings. There are some very, very humorous similarities to be had there. So, in particular, what I'm thinking about is the Eye of the Crimson King, and then the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah. Like, it's a blatant parallel in a lot of the stuff that he does.
Which I think Stephen King later on, especially, once he picked the series back up, covered his tracks a little bit by pop culturing the fuck out of everything. And, I think that's why you have lightsabers, you have you never told me this, and let's not kid ourselves. For the 4 people here, a snitch as a bomb?
No, yeah, I did mention that at one point, but I think it's just in all the other things going on. But it's a Harry Potter brand.
Yeah,
as well.
The Harry Potter model.
Yes,
like once I saw that, immediate click. I knew exactly. I was like, oh, it's a snitch. Ha.
Also, go ahead.
It's one of the really brilliant sort of metrics that you use for getting into the King world is basically saying, like, all of this stuff is infused with things that inspired him. There's a lot of Star Wars references before you even get into them riding up with lightsabers, and the fact that they're all
right.
Doctor Doom is even more entertaining.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, so it just kind of, I think it's a beautiful way to sort of be emblematic of the fact that he is impacted by those stories, and it shows by the way that it reflects in the universe.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I was, God damn it, these dogs. I was going to say, because you brought up Doctor Doom, and I was going to compliment that Stephen King does a really good job of making you visualize something, like kind of like burying it a little bit, and then be like, yes, you visualize this 100% correctly by having like one of his auxiliary characters be like, kind of looks like that fucker from Marvel, right? Like,
oh yeah, no, I agree, 110%.
Proof positive that the old credo of you can lead a horse to water but you can't make it drink is incorrect, because he will just shove your head into the water until you've gotten it, and then, make sure that you're all through.
Okay.
To your point, though, when we're talking about going into other stories and reading through, I burnt through the Haunting of Hill House in,
like a
basically
sitting,
like 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I felt like it was nice getting a different sort of tone and a different sort of storytelling style. So it is really easy to start, forcing other things in because you're sort of greedy for it at that point. Right. And speaking of which, when I started getting into Hereditary, there are a lot of things that I found kind of parallels with how I felt about Haunting of Hill House and how I feel about that. So it's we're gonna have a good conversation.
Okay, this happens with us frequently, but it hasn't happened that often on this podcast, where our segue, like you segued exactly to where I was gonna segue.
I assumed
that was my next killing thing, because what I did, I went the extra mile for you last night, Shane. Michael.
Huh?
So, do you remember the arrangement that Shane and I had from last week, Michael?
Yeah, the homework that I said I wasn't going to do.
And you didn't do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I did it last night. I watched An American Werewolf in London.
Well done.
But I took notes the entire time.
Look at
what?
you.
Yeah. So, with no context to anybody who hasn't seen it,
cool.
I'll have Shane talk about Hereditary first, and then I'll bring up the rear with some as Am Wolf.
You are very used to bringing up the rear, sir. It is somewhat your lot in life.
Oh, so I actually did watch a movie this past week.
Oh God, what?
It's My Little Pony Goes to Jackbox, I think, was the title that he pulled up.
Only slightly different. It was the movie that was supposed to come out in theaters, Onward.
Oh, that was a good one.
Oh, yeah. I could talk about that, I guess, maybe.
You Disney Plus having so-and-so, you.
Hey, I stole it like a red-blooded American would. All right? Just none of this streaming bullshit.
Technically, I don't have it either. I just watched my girlfriend's Disney Plus, so...
What? Never mind. Well...
You heard me.
Short and sweet, I believe, was the title.
Well, Michael, we might need some levity near the end of all of our conversations here, so maybe it is good that you have Onward kind of in the chamber.
I don't know about levity, but sure, yeah.
As opposed to the homework you were given to help us generate content, which would be, the reasonable and respectable thing to do as a podcast.
Anyway, Shane, you watched your next favorite movie.
I'm gonna just pump the brakes on you there a minute there, Captain, because no, not quite. Also, I will say up front, I'm not enamored with it. Let's say that.
Legasp.
I'm not saying I don't like it, so I'm gonna have to contextualize this very heavily in order to get into it.
Also, do we want to go ahead
put away
and
your pitchfork?
Do the spoiler warning ahead?
I mean,
Oh.
the movie came out 2 years ago, so we'll adopt the principle that I've heard on so many other podcasts, which is if you haven't watched it by now, it's your own fucking fault. Which
Sweet.
Is, I heard that so many times, and I was insulted by it because it's like, no, I don't care to get around to these things on your time frame. I want to get around to them on mine. So yes, if you
Well-
haven't seen the film and you're interested in seeing it, and spoilerific, we're going to get into a lot of details here. So brace for impact.
We can have
And
Michael.
you could just pause the episode and then watch it and then come right back.
That is a
it'll be
beautiful way to
fresh.
go. Yes, it's
That
a
is
small
well.
tributary.
Or if you're like Michael and you just refuse to do your homework, we can have Michael put a skip ahead in the show note.
The fuck you talking about?
Oh, I'm just
Do
creating
more
extra
work,
work for you
Michael.
since you didn't
Yeah.
do
yeah,
your
I ain't
homework.
doing that. I never said I would do that.
So
Shane could do it.
So Shane, why do you want to shit on my heart today?
No, I really enjoyed it. So I think I spent a significant amount of time. I had difficulty engaging with it. Let's say that. So
Why?
the characters, I will operate like the first thing out of my mouth is I'm going to have to say I'm operating at a deficit here because one, Gabriel Byrne and I don't get along.
Who's
He's,
Gabriel Byrne?
He plays the dad in the
Oh.
movie.
Okay.
I'm also, and I'm spacing on her name at the present, but the individual who plays the mother, she's not my favorite actress either.
Okay.
Or actor. Let's keep that,
Sure.
It's going to be non-gender specific with that. Because that gets people upset in Tarantino movies. But yes, the actors in the cast in general are not my favorite. So I kind of went in with a bias in place already because I was going, I'm not going to like this so much.
Like these fucking guys.
And then the absurdity of kudos and credit to the young lady who plays Charlie.
Oh
But
my god.
she's tough to deal with. As someone who has, a lot of OCD and kind of peccadillos, the glottal stop thing really annoyed me.
Yeah.
So I'm automatically like shutting down on this movie within the first 20 minutes because she's just standing there being bizarre. And as someone who you're going to get facets of my personality here for the listeners who have nothing, no real familiarity or acquaintance with me. I'm like, what sort of fucking trash parents are you that you don't have an EpiPen if your child has an actual allergy? And then I'm like, oh, well, here's some really bad foreshadowing. So some of the devices of the storytelling I have little tiny quibbles with.
That's
and
fair.
I watched the Cinema Sins just to sort of see what, some other illuminated points were. And I agree
need
with
to.
a lot of the things that they were pointing out. That said, I feel like it was a bleak, kind of disorienting, and a really bizarre story, which The Haunting of Hill House is also. And it's a lot of people sort of reacting to, bizarre circumstances and trying to keep a brave face on. And so the one thing I would really give it a lot of credit for is it has that Hellraiser-esque sort of facet of the emphasis is on the individuals trying to be normal under the least normal of circumstances.
Also, they
And
end up
so-
being the bigger monsters overall.
Exactly. So in watching the film, like I was really engrossed and very easily engaged by what we'll call the lore of the story. And that I really am into, and the fact that they were so detail-oriented with it was really nice, and I found myself sort of being drawn to catching the little minute details and pausing and trying to make sure that I was catching things as it was happening, which I don't normally go fine-tooth comb over a film.
Yeah.
So it's fleshed out really well, and I will give a lot of the credit. The performances are fantastic, so it's a great film. It's just really difficult to it's the Pet Cemetery thing. I didn't have a lot of empathy for the characters.
I was kind of getting that impression from you. Yeah.
And so it's difficult to kind of get over that initial hump, but I found the story really compelling and I was interested in what was happening. I just, the more that things started going, how ludicrous the whole sequence of letting the kid go to the party, her,
Oh my
and
goodness,
him
yeah.
not being attentive at all as a big brother, like they are obviously pounding the world's largest supply of fucking walnuts, and like, yes, they show you a shot of it, so it's intended to somewhat draw your attention to it, but it's like, you wouldn't even go check.
You
It's
kind of
just-
call it
yeah.
like a Chekhov's walnut, you know?
Yes, it's basically like, I was doing the Brody Bruce in Mallrats thing. Watch the kid
Yeah.
is on the escalator again.
So
I'm like, no one has responsibility in this entire fucking film. So when she goes on her rant at the dinner table, I was like, I was saying this 2 minutes into this film. What the fuck is wrong with all of you?
yeah, I
So-
love the nightmares that she has, and then I also on the Charlie thing, the movie begs a rewatch, in my opinion. Like, once you get, I almost did what you said you did with, what was it? Is it The Witch that you did it with? Essentially a classic Shane maneuver, which is the movie ends and then you immediately just restart it and you go through it again.
Yes, I did it with The Witch because I loved it, which, again, we're going to derail all over the place on this, but it's because it's also an A24 film and they're structured so similarly, it's difficult not to draw the parallels, and I was much more engaged by The Witch than I was with this story.
That's fair.
Taking nothing away from it, because I found both of them really interesting, great, and compelling, but the thing I did the rewatch on was Mulholland Drive. It's a David Lynch picture, and it is so bizarre that I mostly restarted it because I was like, I don't feel like I assimilated enough of this. I felt like an idiot by the time I finished it, which most David Lynch films, by the time you get through,
That's
you
how I
feel
felt
like
with The
you're-
Lighthouse.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is the follow-up from the director of The Witch.
Yes.
By the end of that movie, I was like, I enjoyed it, but I don't feel like I was the target demographic.
Right.
And then I kind of did the internet perusal of like, can someone explain this to me? Like, I'm 5 years old.
Right.
And apparently the whole thing is like based upon like Greek mythos, which now I need to rewatch it with that in mind, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it even more. But on Hereditary, I just remember it being recommended to me. I don't remember who recommended it, and I saw it like probably like 11:30 at night on Amazon Prime. And I was like, I think now is the time to start this. Like, I'll just check it out. And I am very guilty at starting a movie and then finishing it at a later point. Like,
Okay.
so I'll watch like half a movie, go to sleep, wake up, and then with my coffee finish it. Just whatever. And where I ended my night one watch was terrible, because I was in the same boat as you. I was like, this is just weird for the sake of being weird, it feels like. And I know it's A24, so I'm going to trust the process here, but it might lose me, and it might be like Spring Breakers. I'll never rewatch that A24 movie. Like, maybe this is another strikeout for me. I don't know. And then the party scene happens, and I'm with you 100%, where I'm like,
Yeah.
they're really going to fucking let this kid die at this party, and she's going to suffocate. And then it upped the ante a little bit, and it took me completely off guard. And I don't really, and I've said it before, like, I don't really react, externally when I watch movies by myself, because who am I trying to share the emotion with except for myself? And when she gets decapitated, oh my god, I let out the most. I was like, like it literally, and that's where my first checkbox of like, I think I might end up liking this movie, is like, you can take these moments for me and you can really fuck with me. And then to your point further, the lore building there afterwards, I was like, I'm unsettled and I don't know why.
Joke's on me, though, with that, because I was like, well, thank Christ, I'm not going to have to hear that for the rest of the film. Son of a bitch,
but then
that
you
they
did.
use
Yeah.
it for jump scares later. I'm like, I hate you so much. I just wanted to be done with this.
Another compliment
Can't avoid.
and another reason that I'll recommend this movie to anybody who enjoys horror and or performances is because Ari Aster has a really unique gift. And I say it this way because after seeing Midsummer, it's apparent that it wasn't just a one and done with how he picks gets his talent. The way that he captures and motivates his actors and actresses to display grief are shattering. Like the mom, like just how that family handles grief in general. The performances are just astounding and just spine chilling. And I know that it's hard for me to recommend Midsummer, but I think Midsummer would be more your speed, because
I'm planning on watching it, so
it is 110. Like, if you liked Hereditary because of the lore, then Midsummer is basically 2.5 hours of them going, here is nothing but lore.
Yeah, and the nice aspect of that, as we'll get into when you start going on American Werewolf, is they sunk their fangs really deep in that initial, like the opening sequence, because they don't answer any of the questions. They just leave a lot of that unresolved. So I left that movie with more questions than I had answered that were remedied. And same thing with Hereditary. I went back going, okay, well, let me research this because I'm fairly certain I've heard this, and I'm one of those, like, I've read occultist literature, so I have seen the name, and I'm familiar with, you know, the grimoire for the Key of Solomon, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's in it. It's represented there. He actually researched it, and they pulled in an actual known demon that's listed as, you know, one of the kings of hell. So I was like, at least the research wills out. The parallel that I drew to it as I was running through, there are so many similar films. Like, there's a film that stars the young lady who's the wife in Midsummer. It's called Malevolent. Which is very similar to what you were talking about with the fake film crew that goes in and
Grave
films.
Encounters.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it is a group of sort of like paranormal researchers that go in, and they're all fakes. They're hacks. They go into a house and convince someone that they've found something just to make money. And she is their quote unquote medium, but she actually does have a gift and is able to see these things. So she's in a house where horrific things have occurred, and she's actually seeing it, and they all think she's just acting. So they're encouraging her, like, they're like, oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, you're doing really great. And she's really losing her
fucking mind. Yeah.
So that was a fun parallel. There's also like The Quiet Ones is another. It's a Hammer horror picture. It has a lot of similar sort of lore and world building, which you would really like. It's a fantastic film, so if you want to check it out. And also, funnily enough, as I was running through this, I'm like, they fucking lifted the Paranormal Activity like lore and pulled that in. So I'm like shaking my finger at it. The film that I love, and I think I've turned John on to this previously, is The Ninth Gate.
Turn me on all the time.
Turn me on, Dead Man. But The Ninth Gate is the film that has that similar sort of like, the occultist literature and the everyman character descending into madness as they stumble along the path of unraveling these things and discovering that it is actually, in point of fact, true. And so Johnny Depp's fantastic in that one, and Frank Langella's in it, and he's brilliant. So if they reference a lot of the books that they use as basis for Hereditary in The Ninth Gate. So you'll see similar sort of tributaries of thought there.
Michael?
Anyway, that's me.
Michael, have you seen The Ninth Gate?
Nope.
How about you and I watch that movie?
I will probably... Wait, is it on Netflix?
If it's not, you can borrow my copy. I mean,
he'll mail it to you. First post. The post that hurts the most.
You'll be posted.
I mean, I won't make any promises, but I'll put an effort.
Okay, well, I'm going to watch The Ninth Gate before next week, because it is one of the movies that Shane brings up frequently when we talk about horror movies, and it's just happened to be one of those that I haven't, let's just say I wasn't ready for it yet. I wasn't at the time where I could see it, and I'm still spoiler-free on it, so I think I'll have a fun time with it.
Okay, it's more cerebral than anything. It is sort of unsettling.
That's what I want right now. But before we jump into American Werewolf here, one scene of many in Hereditary. Oh my god, the end with the the hoisting of herself up and the decapitation in the attic.
Right.
That legitimately stuck with me for probably like 2 weeks after watching it originally. It fucked my whole life up.
I laughed through the entire sequence because
you're a serial killer. Yeah.
Yes. No, but like how they start. The whole film is really bizarre. So, I mean, you've got non-linear storytelling, which it's automatically difficult. The thing that like threw me out, they never tell you that the kid told them about the accident until she's making the fucking diorama. Like he lets her find the body, and then there's nothing. They never contextualize that. Yes, he admits what happened. You're sitting there the whole time. I was like, did they just believe that this just happened and her body wound up in the fucking car? Like, so you start to hit that.
I think they're trying to imply that like you're smart enough to know that, and without having to show you.
The whole rest of the film though is so bizarre that you're almost like, okay, well, this woman's cracked enough that I would imagine that she would be like, she cut the head off a pigeon and now they took her head and we're all being stalked by some supernatural lady. Like, so until they brought that back in, it was one of those things where, like, you're disoriented enough that I felt like they needed to give a couple more mile markers along the
That's
road
fair.
to make it feel a little bit more visceral, because otherwise it's really easy to detach from it. So by the time you get to that scene and she's suddenly climbing the fucking walls, and then they start
It does
that
come
whole
out of fucking
sequence
nowhere.
where he wakes up and then she just floats out of the room, and I was guffawing at that point, because it's not like The Witch where she starts levitating off the ground, spoilers, at the end of the film, and as she's fucking ascending, you're like, oh shit. Okay, so the whole pact with the devil actually happened, and this is, this is happening in front of me. Where the witch flew at the beginning of the film, we're now seeing the parallel. Just her wafting through the door, I'm like, and she's fucking flying now. Okay, sure, why the fuck not? Let's just have her levitate across the goddamn room, because all of a sudden the Kathy Bates knockoff is actually her mom's friend. And the CinemaSins bit, what they point is like, oh, really great fucking job at hiding your sinister plan by taking 28 goddamn pictures of yourselves handing out brownies and having goddamn sorority parties with your goddamn witches cult.
I'm
and
gonna
then
watch
leaving
that.
it for her to just magically, discover after she finds out that it's a sinister plot, but before she finds the fucking body up in the attic. Like, it's just a little too convenient. And again, you can quibble with any sort of storytelling this way, but once you get through it, it's like, yeah, when you're already starting to unravel the sweater, like, it's difficult to keep on point when they deprive you of things like that kind of give you the orientation.
How about, as a final word, as a directional debut? What do you think?
Visually, stylistically, it's brilliant. It's a really well shot film. I loved it. It felt like an A24 film. Like, it really fits in with their canon. And the performances were great. It was unsettling in all the ways it needed to be. I approve. Like, it's a great film. I will watch it again. I really liked it. I think that it had the potential to be more to me, so I was more poking holes in the boat by the time we got to the end. And some of the things, like I talked about, I wished it would have been a little bit more refined. But that's a style choice, and that, taste is totally subjective. We were talking about this, Melissa and I talked about how I claim I hate absurdist humor, and she thinks that the Coen brothers films are all just pure absurdist humor. And I was like, you're right, because it is theater of the absurd in a lot of ways, but the peccadillos they have are similar to my peccadillos, so I can relate to that more than The Office, where people are just staring at each other and doing that, like, did he just say that?
It's two different approaches,
right?
So yeah,
I hate
agree
Wes
with you.
Anderson films.
Oh.
Like, I do not like them. And again, see, that's, people do that. And those who are cinema fiends, obviously the Richard Edwards thing, like, the man's based all of his bloody, band names on the Royal Tenenbaums. So obviously it's got merit to it, but I don't like the actors he chooses. I don't like the style of filmmaking. But it's totally taste. It has nothing to do with the quality of it. It's just not for me. So...
Well, that's fair. Well, Shane, thank you for watching one of my recommended
bless
movies.
you for recommending it, because I really enjoyed it, and I appreciated you sharing it, because I as much as I loved The Witch, it was a nice, sort of like calling card or a second verse, if you will. Yeah. So it was fun to watch. Thank you.
Yeah, well...
I know you don't have to give me any provocation to go on at length about cinema, because it's a really easy balloon to pop, because I'll just go all over the place.
I knew exactly what I was setting up last week by doing these little things. So,
and Michael's just desperate to get a word in edgewise. I see that drool's actually accumulating in the corner of his mouth now. So
there were a couple times I wanted to jump in, but you guys were describing it well enough that, like, I felt that a lot of my points that I would have added in were kind of almost superfluous.
So you could say that you were just being a producer / editor, just making sure that everything goes according to plan.
I guess.
I'm giving you kudos for use of the word superfluous.
I mean, a lot of what I do is considered superfluous, so
well, it's a close one.
I'm used to it. Yeah.
Okay, so Shane, Michael, how would you prefer that I discuss An American Werewolf in London? Do you want me just to read the notes as I have them in here?
With dance. Interpretive dance, please.
How about I just read them as I have it written, because it's shorthand, because I was trying to pay attention to the movie. I didn't pause at all. I just just
Okay.
whatever.
Sounds
And
reasonable.
Sounds fine to me.
Shane,
yeah.
you can pull.
I'll interject wherever I need to, yes.
So, the first note that I have is Debbie Knoll, quote, "Nothing dull about that body," unquote. Because
Yep.
it's him.
It is very much a product of its era. Like, it feels like a film that was made in the 70s, so...
Yeah, and I mean, technically, probably production was late 70s, because it came out
Yes.
in 81.
Yes, it was basically... I think it was late 79 into 80 when they were shooting, so...
Backpacking sounds dumb to me. I've never understood it as on principle, so, like, the fact that they're just, like, so willy-nilly, like, happy to be just hoofing it for 3 months,
Well, it all depends on, like, what do you mean by backpacking? If you mean, like, traveling all over the place, like, by car, whatever, I mean, like, it's an adventure of sorts.
They are
As-
hitching
like,
their
it's
way
something-
across England at the beginning of the film, and they are planning on going to Europe later, so they're backpacking across Europe.
Okay, so, like, not walking, but, like...
They're walking for a
cars.
lot of it, actually. They're
Okay,
trying
no,
to
fuck
hitch,
that,
but
no.
yeah, they're walking a lot of it.
No, I'd rather, like... Because if I ever got the chance to backpack, it wouldn't be something that's, like, months long. I would rather, all right, taking the train to this place, taking a train, flying to this, busing to that.
Hey,
Like, just being it.
cardio, man.
yeah.
Nah.
Nah. So we get to the Slaughtered Lamb Pub, which I just have a note that says Slaughtered Lamb Pub. I think it's because I liked the imagery, like the logo.
Yeah, the sign is brilliant. You gotta love it.
And then the next 3 notes I have are all related to interactions inside of the pub. The first one
made me miss the board.
we'll get to that. The first one I have is my man's getting heckled by Mike Myers. Because one of the dudes in there to me looked like Mike Myers. Also, they said pentangle, and it threw Becky and I off. To the point where we rewound it because we thought they had mispronounced pentagon or pentagram. Or,
It's it's interchangeable. It's a British idiom,
And then to what you already jumped to, I just have a note that says Jim Jeffries playing darts. LOL. Because seriously, look up Jim Jeffries and then look at that guy in the scene. They are identical twins.
I also really love that the gentleman who sort of tells the joke and then gets a lot of the exposition out is in Alien 3. He is one of the priests in that. So I was more tickled by the casting, where I was like, there's a lot of, heavy hitters in here from the obscurest sort of method actor school here.
Yeah. And then I think it jumps ahead to when they cross the moor.
They are kicked out and have to wander the moors at night, which they tell them to stay off of the moors. But
then, as Americans are wont to do, they say, "Well, we know what we're doing here."
Fuck that shit.
And
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
And then the slaughter happens, and Jack is down for the count. And the note that I have leading from there is, "Well, I guess it's not called 2 American Werewolves for a reason."
Is Zachary. It's also like, I really enjoy, you get very few hero shots of the creature. It's always done in flashes, like they don't have to overexpose it, which it leads, you have to kind of figure out as it goes along.
Yeah, I tried to go into it as I go into any movie that's, older.
Dated.
Yeah, like with the things that I'm seeing, it probably would have just blown me away back then. It would have been super effective, but also even still now, whether if it was a stylistic approach or a budgetary approach, doing it that way was super effective.
It's the Hitchcock thing. Like, your mind will always make it more vivid and better than it would be if they try to show it to you.
Yeah. And so when he wakes up, and he's in the hospital bed, there's a note I have here. It's like, nurse talking about his dick. That's why she knows he's Jewish. I thought was just if we were just talking about things being dated, that was like probably the most dated part of the whole movie. She's like, well, I know he's a Jew because I lifted up the covers and...
I will admit, like, a lot of the humor is really sophomoric, which is, the guy actually, I'm spacing on who the director was. He was 20 when he wrote that script and filmed it. So it helps to contextualize that he is the age of the characters that he's writing. So not difficult to see that those are the sort of jokes that are being made.
Mr. Collins is actually Uncle Touchy, and he sounds like Kermit fucked Seinfeld.
Okay.
Jeez.
I like your Mystery Science Theater 3000 approach to this. I really do.
Well, it's because at a certain point I told Becky, I was like, hey, like, we're watching this movie, but it says in the description itself that it's somewhat of a comedy too. So like,
Right.
I'm not approaching this as like art cinema. Like, if you want to, like, we can, like, let's shit talk each other during this movie a little bit. Like, let's have fun with watching An American Werewolf in London.
You do know that was actually Frank Oz, right?
No, I did not.
Yeah, that was Frank Oz.
So that's
The character. So yes,
So-
the reason it is literally, Miss Piggy doing that
So
voice.
I am a genius on accident.
Well, it wasn't Kermit, but I mean, it's Frank Oz, so you have the Muppet-esque kind of feel for the voices there. But yes,
yeah, Michael, you know what the Muppets are?
They do a lot of kids shows on PBS, right?
And Circle gets the square.
and that is why you can't watch them because you can't be within 50 feet of the shows as they're being filmed. Or
Yeah, TVs also count. Like if
Okay.
someone puts on like that show, I gotta leave.
change channels
Software.
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what I think is probably my favorite moment in the whole movie happens not shortly after, or shortly after. It's the orderly. He's pushing the cart, and the nurse is trying to ask him a question, and he very shortly and curtly is like, "I'm an orderly, not a psychiatrist. I just push things around."
Yep.
True.
With a blessed Indian accent as well.
Yeah. Next note. Nurse and Mr. Werewolf are gonna fuck so hard.
And how? That is one of those blessed 80s sex sequences as well. When
Oh,
it
we're
happens,
getting
you're
there.
like, oh, man.
His dreams are hilarious to me.
They are very interesting.
Especially the one where they're all wearing crude masks and they break into his family's house while they're eating dinner and they just are brandishing semi-automatic weapons.
Those are Nazi
As you
werewolves, by the way.
Okay, cool. I said,
they're demon Nazis. That's what they're
I
described
said
as.
crude masks on what look like Nazis is what I
Yeah,
have.
they are demon Nazis.
And then I just have one that's very long, just David. Then this acting is, ouch. There's
It is
some very
really, yeah.
yeah, there's some really, really tough sections to get through. And then this nurse trying to fuck.
The Florence Nightingale syndrome is very strong with that woman. I mean, it is impressively strong.
But, and then, all caps I wrote, loving the setup.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know where it was going. Like, I've never seen it before, and I know it's a product of its time and it's dated, but the setup is super effective, where he's, like, dragging his knuckles on, like, wanting to accept that this is reality.
Yeah.
And then I really, really like let's call it the lore of, like, the limbo. And,
Yes, and the
why
interplay
Jack,
between he and his friend. Yeah.
is probably some of my favorite stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
And then we have the subway. And the subway, I think, is my all-time, like, you were describing the filming methods, like, showing it off camera. It actually ended up being super tense through that whole sequence.
You're getting to the subway after the transformation, and we didn't touch on the transformation sequence at all. So did it live up to the hype when you got to it, or?
Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm jumping ahead. Why do I have the subway written up there?
I don't know, but yeah, this.
Okay,
you
hold
don't
on.
get to the subway till after the metamorphosis. So.
It's it's the subway where he's making the faces at the nurse.
Oh, okay, yes.
Over all the like Londonite punks.
Yes, the glorious spiked hairdos and all the drunkards, and he's just making faces.
And Michael, you have not seen this movie.
No.
This has to be so much fun for you just to hear.
Yes.
Are you being deposed right now? Like,
Yes.
Maybe.
I'm holding you in contempt regardless.
Well,
so.
Michael, if I had to pitch this movie to you on one scene alone, it would be the shower sex scene that happens after what we've just talked about. It is some of the laziest dry humping that I have ever seen in my entire life.
Sold.
Also during the entire scene, like, they're not fully kissing each other, but they're not kissing each other, and then they're also doing like these like weird nibbles on the like the corner of the shoulder blade, but they're not anywhere close to having sex.
It's
but
quote unquote sensual.
I wrote it was like watching my own sex tape. World's longest and worst sex scene.
It's basically like watching two people try to shake hands who hate each other.
Yeah.
It's just so awkward and painful, and you're like, could you just get this over with, please? And they just drag it on, and I'm like, listen, I know she's attractive, and you just wanted to film her for as long as humanly possible, but
yeah,
dear God, let her up.
There was one nipple in the movie, so I was very, very happy that they.
She's a very fetching British woman.
Yeah.
We will give her credit for that.
I love that his friend, so David. I love that David's friend is there just to roast him in limbo.
I also love that they have him deteriorating as it's happening as well. So he's not just staying the same; he's actually decaying.
Every time you see him in the movie, he's in a different state of decay, which made me curious about the werewolf that bit David, or killed Jack. Anyway, it made me wonder about that werewolf because of how many people he had to have killed, and if the deterioration keeps happening, like essentially you're just being haunted by just skeletons, and how bizarre that would be. So, I said, man, Nurse Alex has low standards. She just wants dicked down constantly.
I mean, yeah, she doesn't seem to be very discerning considering he is obviously losing his mind when they're still in the hospital and she still takes him home. Yeah, she's like, oh, it's cute. He's got a nice dick. Why not?
And then I have, was this movie just one big setup for the Bad Moon Rising song?
It feels like it. And Blue Moon. Every moon-related song in human history is featured in this film, with the exception of ours. I was waiting for Crescent to pop up at the end of it.
I was going to make an MOON joke, but I didn't even need to. You know?
Yeah.
And then I do have, the setup was worth the transformation. The transformation scene was so fucking cool. Both times that you get it was great. I think the second transformation was even a little more like, ooh, because you're watching him, like, the nail go through the fingernail.
Like, like the back of the theater transformation.
Yeah.
And he's like being observed as well, which is even worse because it's that voyeuristic kind of feel where it's like it's the worst thing that conceivably happen to him, and he's like, oh god, now I've got to do this in public in a nudie booth.
I have my favorite character is Jack.
He is well worth, just his ribbing the entire time, and then being they actually let the actor operate the puppet for the skeleton at the end as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The Rogan podcast where they talk to the gentleman that does the makeup effects is fun to listen after you've seen the movie.
For sure. We already touched on this, but I said victims in limbo is such a cool concept. And then my final two notes: Piccadilly is being torn apart, and Nurse Alex is just dreaming of dick.
Yep.
And then I wrote, LOL, what a dismount. Because that movie, the way it ends is almost like someone just ran out of paper.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, I love that it was short enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome. Like, it just kind of hits you with enough, and before the acting really drives you insane, where you're like, oh my god, this is so cheesy. They at least get to the ending quickly enough. You're like, okay, the Piccadilly sequence is terrifying. Like, if you take it just without looking at the fact that, yes, it looks a little dodgy that it's doing the werewolf scramble across and everything, like, it's still a fun sequence, and it's just ripping people's heads off, just biting people's skulls. Yeah, it's exactly what would happen.
Overall, though, I have to say I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it more on my end because of how dated it was, and because with all the time that's passed since it came out, it feels like a B horror to me.
It's campy. It's very campy.
And it was perfect for mentally where we've been. Like it worked really well for that time. I think it'll make its rounds during the Halloween season. Like I can see why it's a staple.
Yeah. And now that we've finished, cucking Michael for another 40 minutes.
I will say that I looked it up and I couldn't easily find the shower scene that you were talking about on YouTube.
How unfortunate.
Have you tried Pornhub?
Yeah. No, I was only looking on YouTube. I didn't want to turn it into a long
go to
search.
Pornhub and type in werewolf shower sex.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
That's going to be
oh my god, he's actually going to do it. I like this.
Cash find.
All right, let's do it.
Speaking of our lore, there's 3 gentlemen that are constantly driven by the urges of their genitals, apparently.
That's the plague of our gender, actually.
That's what I understand.
It's the only thing we're good for and bad for.
Now, I will also say, running through, like, in the instances of Hereditary really inspiring me, there are several episodes of the Black Tapes podcast and the Magnus Archives. Particularly, Magnus Archives has an episode that's called A Father's Love, where it is a gentleman who is killing members of a cult and bringing them back and sacrificing them in like a shed behind his home where he keeps all of their hearts in a jar. So he's a policeman that turns into a serial killer, and you don't find out what the origins are of his actions until you're in like the 4th season of the podcast. So they play, I'm telling you, Magnus Archives, if you ever really get like bored out of your mind and you finally succumb to me goading you about it, it is so worth it because the storytelling is brilliant, and for a podcast medium is as good as it gets as far as them putting you in the world. So
let me retort with this. Do you have puzzles at home?
Do I have puzzles? No. I mean, if I had one, it was one that my mom gave me that was like Jesus appearing in front of people, so no.
Oh, like actual jigsaw puzzles. Sorry, I found something, but I'm waiting for a moment before
Michael,
I do it.
Please, for the love of God, just talk about it.
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't watch it. I was going to use the magic of...
Screen sharing?
Hold on.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, you're... Oh.
I don't think I've made you a presenter, and... Oh, well, all right.
What?
So, is this a scene from there?
Hold on.
Nope. That is... so, the American Werewolf in Paris is
Paris.
Yeah, it's
okay,
a different...
all right, never mind.
All
right. And
wait.
I don't know who this Rose Crowley
One more row
is.
down.
Watches...
I'm very upset that I'm recording this now. Particularly, I'm recording this on my work computer, so
okay.
just bear
all right,
that
I'm
in
stopping
mind.
share. Done.
Oh.
Let's do this on our own time, gentlemen. There's people listening to this.
This was the best section of our podcast to date.
I'm going to disagree patently with that, but yeah.
So to describe it, even though I already exited out of it, I went to Pornhub and I searched American Werewolf in London shower scene. And I got a video, a 2-minute, 40-second video of, I think, a porn actress watching it on her phone, and then a sex scene from American Werewolf in Paris.
Can you please describe? It was one row. It was in the second row, far left. Can you describe what that one was?
I don't know. Those were the only 2 I was paying attention to. There was something I saw that mentioned some sort of like...
It was...
I think it said World of Warcraft or something.
World of Warcraft, Death Claws, which is a Fallout reference, and something else. And the still image was someone wearing a cheap werewolf mask and like clad in like, again, like fake costume leather, just railing abroad. Shane is so... I have never seen Shane this visibly uncomfortable before.
It's more I despair for the future of this species. This is the lengths to which we are debauched. And listen, I'm one of the most deplorable human beings on the planet. And even that, I'm like, oh, come on, really?
I mean, if it gets you off, it gets you off.
Now, I've never been that complicated. I really haven't.
I beg to differ.
Fair.
Now, Michael... Before we start diving down the last of our little rabbit holes,
okay.
Do you
Pun
have
intended.
Do you have like your all-time like oof awkward bruh sex story? Do you have something like that?
Sex story?
Yeah.
Have you had sex?
Yes, I have. I just had sex, to use a Lonely Island reference.
Let's go ahead real quick just for Steven. Not spoilers. Trigger warnings here for the remainder of the episode. There's a lot of holes being filled.
That's not just Steven.
Oh,
okay.
It's honestly not as awkward as you think it is.
Oh, good. We'll just ramp it up.
Also, title of your sex tape.
I wish. No, it was like a long time ago. An ex
in a galaxy far away.
Yeah, sure. We were at my place, so literally the room next, like right behind me, and we were goofing around. We were going to start, and then there's a knock on the door. So we're already naked. We throw the covers over us, and one of our friends comes in. Or no, wait, sorry. Yeah, okay. All right, two awkward sex stories. Him, my roommate, and another person, they're all plastered. He comes down, he sits next to me, pretty much almost sits on my lap on the bed. He's like, "How's it going, bud?" And I'm like, okay, I guess. And he proceeds to just talk to me about like how lovely life is for a good 10 minutes. And I'm just sitting there like shirtless, like
are you naked all the way, like underneath the covers, and he's just sitting next to you, and also your girl, and your girl is also 100% naked, covering up with the blanket, and he's not taking a hint because he's drunk.
Oh yeah, plastered.
Now,
was he trying to make a menage a trois happen, perhaps?
No, I don't think so at all. But no,
I can tell why she's your ex. Because you don't know how to lock a goddamn door when you're going to be having sex.
To quote Brandon Urie, haven't you people ever heard of closing the goddamn door?
The goddamn door. Yeah. I like the okay. As an aside, I like the radio edit for that because they only censor God. They don't censor damn.
Well, hail Satan.
And then what is it?
Parmesan be praised.
They also say shh at some point, but I can't remember what they were censoring.
The video's a lot of fun because he does like the sarcastic, covering of his mouth, kind of like you. And
I didn't even know that.
Watch the video.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, well, thank you for kind of warming up a little bit, Shane.
What is your secondary sex story then?
Oh, God.
It involves kind of the same situation. I was there in my room. We were about ready to get busy.
He didn't lock the door again.
No. I got a phone call from one of our friends who said that roommate and the same guy that also went in and talked, they were kicked out of their Uber along Broadway Road, and they needed a ride. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll stop what I'm doing and pick them up because it's like midnight and they're out there by themselves plastered.
Is this the same guy? Just if I can make a guess. Is this the same guy that I nearly made cry? Dewan and I both nearly made cry because we ripped on Rush so hard?
No.
Okay.
No.
This is why I don't have
Different
friends, gentlemen.
Dude, fucking same.
I'm just gonna lay that out there.
Yeah. So I also made it clear to them that I was picking them up, like what I was doing beforehand, and so like the person that called, she kind of apologized a little bit.
I would say I will be there when I am goddamn good and ready. So give me an hour. I hope you don't stumble into traffic.
I once
give me 5
showed
seconds.
Up to Shane's apartment,
naked and drunk.
Yeah, no, we had a plan for the day, so I showed up, surprisingly to my memory, at least somewhat on time. And
I thought you were going to say sober.
That wouldn't have mattered in the slightest because Shane was too busy finishing up, and I think I waited outside for at least 10 to 15 minutes before he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we were having sex."
Yeah, you were early in your defense.
Oh, so, that never happens. That's why.
Yeah, and that never happens. I was not expecting it, but you were early. And I was not early, so...
well, Michael, thank you for sharing those awkward sex stories. I'm Michael.
I mean, I was going to say,
Wait,
which
what?
of your sex stories are not awkward?
None of mine are not awkward.
They're I was going to say, it's impossible.
So Shane, do you want to be the finisher on this one? You want me to go first?
I mean, if you're trying to get me to tell the one story, like I said, that has to be that can't be told in a piecemeal fashion. That's like a 2-hour full discussion. If I'm going to get all the gory details,
discussion.
Dude, you were there when I told you the story at one point. It's like I can't tell that out of context, particularly the way it ends. You cannot get to that sequence without having. Gone full bore.
Then I feel like I can sit on my topic.
No, at this point, I don't think we're too far in. We're not going to drive Michael to distraction. I will try to get it out as quickly as possible.
Then I want you to
Title
go first.
of my sex tape. No, you go first.
Fine. Which one do you want? No, which hole do you want?
The shorter one.
So it was the last time that I was single, and it was the first time that I actually was very active on Tinder. As far as like I had nothing to do. Like I would go to work, I would get home, and I would throw on a show, and I'd be on Tinder. We'd be in the recording studio. I'd be on Tinder. And I didn't have a lot of success because I don't have any game.
It's also Tinder.
And it's Tinder. That being said, if you want the true ending and not the the fake final boss here, like I did end up meeting my wife on Tinder, so
Yes.
so I guess something good did come out of it, or on it.
In it. Well
But, so my first successful hookup from Tinder, it's so fucking bizarre. It's still, every time I think about
See, and this is why I say my story is a long-winded story.
Yeah.
Because the second you start trying to contextualize, it's like, how much thread do I need to pull out here that doesn't make me sound like a total piece of shit?
Well, that's the weirdest part about this, is that I don't feel like a complete piece of shit about this particular hookup, because I did this thing from the onset of using Tinder, being like, I'm just going to be as obnoxiously honest with women as I can possibly be, because they're going to find out eventually that I'm not fun to be around. So I'm just going to like cut all these corners and just like tell you all the bad things about me first.
Yeah, it's like, what purpose does it serve being a used car salesman? Because I am the lemon, so selling you on the bad car seems somewhat superfluous.
So that being said, I matched with this girl and she's super cute. And we start, hitting it off over the chat features, and I am laying it on pretty thick that, just out of a relationship, not looking for anything other than what Tinder is originally proposed for, yada yada, and things start heating up, and she's, instead of using the Tinder app, we actually have each other's phone numbers now, and she is sending nude after nude after nude, which greatly appreciated. There's no way to artfully take a nude of yourself as a guy, but whenever you are blessed to receive one from the fairer sex, it's just magnificent.
Oh, there are ways to artfully take pictures of yourself.
There's not with this small little dick.
Oh, trust me, there is.
Not with me.
I have wreaths just all around the house purely for that purpose.
She starts peppering in, like, between these nudes or whatever, like talks of like, that she has like something, she has a secret, and she thinks that she can share it with me, and that I'll be the one person that can understand based on the conversations that we've had. And I don't know, my mantra back in the day was, I've done worse. Like I've been, and
it's true.
And it's not really an advisable way to live your life. In hindsight.
Fair.
So we get to the point where she tells me what it is, and what she likes is a very specific kink, and that's what is it? Little girl daddy dom.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I
Okay.
had never heard of this shit.
What?
No, I hadn't.
I like that he's incredulous at that.
Yeah, that's not my lane.
I mean, like, it feels like it's I would feel like it's a common fetish, right?
For a grown-ass woman to want to be treated like a child. Like,
it is
to
a
the
fairly
point...
common fetish, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, color me ignorant then, because I had no idea.
I mean,
this
the whole
existed.
schoolgirl fantasy and all that.
Yeah,
That's
but
more for the male perspective, yeah.
The schoolgirl...
Well, yes, yeah, but, like, that's a mainstream
All right.
sort of aspect
Yes.
of it.
Let's not quibble.
Fair.
2020, we
so
don't
my-
kink shame, John.
So my ignorant ass... No.
Got filled up with
but
big
she-
black cock.
She asked me if I am comfortable hooking up with someone that has that fetish, and if I'd be willing to kind of, let's say, play ball. And I'd done worse, or I hadn't done worse than that. I was like, you know what, sure, I'll try anything once, twice, or until it ruins my life forever. Like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So I agree, and the conversation from that point on just like complete 180 changes, and all of a sudden she's calling me daddy, and she's asking if she can do routine things throughout her day, and we're setting up a date. And by date, I mean we're not going to even see each other face to face in a public space.
Oh, it's like straight up, like full life.
She's just gonna
dom.
she's just gonna come to my house.
Mm.
Like that's where the only time I ever met this girl, she came straight to my apartment. We didn't go to dinner. We didn't do anything. She just showed up, and she has this like tiny little backpack on, and she looks adorable. She's wearing like a sundress. She looks kind of preppy in a weird way.
Mm.
Like Shane,
Now, Can we also...
Did you put your middle finger up at him?
Hold on.
Preps. Now, also, again, like, there are details that we need to pepper in here because having lived through this experience as well, John, being John, is sharing this with his sister. So he's discussing, and the build-up to this was...
Details, yeah.
Yes, no, they're not... She's not staring at the nudes and planning on joining in, but just meaning that you're talking to her about the exploits because it's kind of that odd, like, I cannot believe this is actually happening. You believe this shit? And you're not looking to build a structurally sound relationship with this person. You're just trying to get off. So it's just fun. But I remember specifically you telling me that Kristen was the one thing that she's like, can you make her eat out of the cat bowl?
Oh my god. Yeah, so the moment that... Oh, this is so bad. Let's put a little asterisk here, is that...
Just dive in.
Super sex positive, like, as long as you're not hurting anybody, like, it's... And you find someone that wants to participate in these things and it's not harmful, like, fucking go for it.
Yes.
That being said, the moment that
Of
we
course.
found out that this, like, kink existed and one that she was so far down into this kink, we were talking about before she showed up, like... Hey, if you wanted to expand upon this for a few weeks and have her clean the apartment to be a good girl, you could like to be daddy's little girl. And I was like, that is a fascinating way for me to get tricked into being into a relationship.
Daddy wants you to do the laundry again.
So she shows up and she's super, super cute, which I guess is,
She's very sprightly, yes.
Yeah. And we end up... I'm uncomfortable, like I'm still new to the whole being single thing. I'm very new to the Tinder game.
And you're not actually a garbage person, so it's easy to contextualize. You're not just prepared to make this woman a spectacle.
No, so she shows up wearing her sundress. She's super cute. It disarms me a little bit, and I'm like, hey, and back then I was smoking like a chimney, so I was like, hey, like, let's go onto the patio, and I'm gonna have smoke, and we'll have a couple drinks and just hang out, and she smokes pot, so like she's out there smoking pot, I'm chain smoking cigarettes, she's drinking whatever booze, I'm drinking whatever booze, and as you would expect, all of a sudden the talk of trauma comes up, and it comes up in the most unnatural way, where I was asking her what she's going to school for, and she's going to school to be a psychologist or psychiatrist or what have you, and she pivots from that into telling me, again, she's just met me face to face, and this is within 30 minutes of telling me about all of her past traumas, and it's not for me to say out loud what those traumas were, but they were fucking rough and severe.
Yeah.
That being said, we were at my place for a specific reason, and we were both consenting adults, and we ended up moving things into my bedroom.
So fuck your feelings, let me fuck your face.
Well, I later wrote something. Later wrote something really callous on a lyric, which is like, you have to fix yourself before you can fix another person.
Yeah.
And that was a lyric especially about her. I was like, you're spending all this time like going to school to like learn how to fix people, but you yourself like haven't taken the same steps, so it's kind of like pointless.
She looked very much like Harley Quinn as well, so I think it was apt. You got to play Mr. J.
Yeah, I guess. So there were a lot of awkward things that happened in my bedroom, and the first one was that after we kind of like did all the necessary foreplay and whatnot, I found out that from the moment that she had gotten to my apartment, she'd been wearing a butt plug. like from the onset. So we're going down, I was like, what is that? And she kind of just like brushes it off. And without getting too graphic, she didn't really have a very hygienic order of events on how she wanted things done.
Also, did you mention was the suit at another time?
No, yeah, that was at another time.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing out on the juicy details there.
What?
So
Oh
keep in
my
mind
God.
again, Michael, she came to the apartment with a backpack on.
Yes.
So we're all done with the fun bits, and in my head, as most, I'm like, all right, cool. Well, that was successful. No one cried. Everything was
And
great.
thank you for coming.
And I come back from the bathroom after getting cleaned up, and she is changed into pajamas. And the pajama is
Footy pajamas.
it was a onesie,
Oh my god.
And it was like a cat, not like leopard print, but like a fucking cat onesie. And she has emptied the contents of her backpack, and it's just a bunch of like suckers and candies, and she's asking me in little girl voice if she has earned the right to eat or like to like enjoy lollipops.
Oh my
and again,
god.
By the way, we're all going to hell, so just bear that in mind.
Oh my god. Can I have a lolly?
Oh god.
yeah,
You just
I'm
had
triggered. Yeah, I'm fucking triggered. And she's asking me if I want some, and I'm like, no, I'm an adult. I don't fucking need. I just.
So you were talking to her like you would talk to an actual child at that point. It's like, no, I don't need a goddamn lollipop.
The whole thing is a clusterfuck.
Yes, Daddy.
And mind you, like, it's getting later, and I think it has to be at least midnight or close to 1 o'clock at this point.
Oh my god.
And I guess I don't know. A lot of it I'm starting to block out, just because
Repress is the correct term.
But I think overall, the thing that offended me about this experience wasn't any of that. It was that during this time I was a pescatarian, so I'd eat fish but nothing else. But I'd essentially be like, yeah, I'm a vegetarian. It's an easier way to explain it back then. And when we were talking, she's like, oh yeah, me too, totally, whatever. And I was like, oh cool. Like, it's always nice, like, when you're talking to somebody and you don't need to, like, if you're gonna go out to dinner, like, not having to go through that hurdle of like, I don't know.
If you don't eat meat,
No,
how are
I-
we going to get along?
As someone that dated 2 vegetarians in the past, I understand what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
you have to take that into consideration.
So I found out at the conclusion of the evening what her definition of vegetarianism was, because she was
my
still
God.
hungry. So, you know, Daddy had to take her out to dinner. So I took her.
Beautiful.
Through
I love it. I want ice cream.
through a Jack in the Box drive-through, and I don't remember what the fuck I ordered, but she orders a burger, but instead of a bun, she gets it wrapped in lettuce. Yeah,
Oh,
but
God.
to this day, just seeing the catsuit, and she walked around in the catsuit, like she got into the car in the catsuit. My sister saw her walk around the apartment in a fucking catsuit.
Beautiful.
Had you removed the butt plug entirely at this point?
Yeah, she had rinsed it off and put it into her backpack after
Okay.
taking out the lollies.
Thank God.
So
Don't want to mix your butt plug and
Yeah,
lollies.
exactly.
Don't know.
yeah, so
Uh,
spoiler alert, she wanted more than a one night stand after explicitly saying that she was also in the mood for nothing more than just a one night stand, and I haven't talked to her since. But
oof.
I did try one. Things got desperate, and she never responded. So I think she moved on. I think she's doing okay.
Or she's dead.
Well,
As in all these sequences, we're just going to assume the person's died of unnatural causes.
well, speaking about things dying, Shane, take me home.
Oh, God.
Oh, do we really need
fuck,
to?
we do, Michael.
I don't know why.
You don't need to beat the
why
record.
it is that you feel like you want to end this as quickly as humanly possible. You are the one who wanted to start this whole little thing in motion, Michael. So this podcast
I'm just
is going to
picturing-
go as long as it goddamn needs to, and you're just going to deal with it.
Oh my goodness.
So,
All right. Wait, before you
right.
start it, because somebody wanted to discuss this on camera or on recording. So you guys are interested in reading the fan fiction,
Yes.
The My Immortal,
we can
right?
do that.
Okay.
I would say of anything, I thought the best way to approach it would be, since I've been around while you read text, I will take the role of the narrator so that I will handle the bulk of the nonsense, and then you can still be Ebony when she's speaking in her natural
Okay,
voice.
You give me whatever role you feel
All right.
appropriate.
Well, it's more like assigning like people, like who like, are you gonna be Snap? Are you gonna be Lupin? Are you gonna be Dumbledore? Like,
Now,
that
if
sort
you
of
are
thing.
if you're bound and determined to narrate the thing, I won't deprive you of it. And I think you did a stellar job of it while we were doing the episodes, so perhaps that is what individuals want. I also just feel like you read enough of the text while we were doing the show that it would feel like we were rehashing, because you read the entire first chapter already anyway.
Well, I also read it more straight-faced. I'd want to be a little more flowery with the read.
Well, fluidity is to be encouraged.
Quite.
Yes, because when I edited it, I definitely thought to myself that I was being a little too boring with the read. Like, I didn't give it enough of the chutzpah or, insert word that's synonymous with that.
Well,
so you
here's
want to be
the
a
thing.
showman.
So, a little bit.
It's your world.
Not the greatest, but...
you're fucking this dog. I'm just holding its head. So, tell me what you want me to do.
I'll think about it.
Know.
I'll
How
think
about
about
you
it.
just record as much of the bits as you want, and then John and I we're happy to take part. We've given you tacit approval at this point.
Well, okay, so then that actually is a good point. So then do we want to record it like quote unquote live, or do we want to record separate
I think
pieces?
the interplay, of course, is what you're probably aiming for, is you want it to be live.
A little bit.
So yeah, we'll be there. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, we're going to rib you ceaselessly as we go through that process, and it's going to be long. And since I know you're so opposed to the idea of something taking a reasonable amount of time,
but I can take my sweet time with those episodes
you can take
because
your sweet
they won't
time
be.
With this too.
No, I can't. I have deadlines to meet. But I mean, if we record on a separate day, on another day, it'll be easier. But anyway, enough of me bitching about that. Okay, start your story. I got the information I wanted.
The compressed version of this is going to remove a significant amount of the requisite detail and, the necessary bits that I feel for any human being to really understand how horrible this experience was at the end of it. But for context, I was engaged to a very lovely young woman for a significant amount of time. I had had a really weird situation with the starting of that relationship, so when it dissolved of natural causes and it was not acrimonious, we just parted company. She's an amazing woman, and I still care about her immensely to this day.
Very amicable. Yeah.
When that relationship ended, I was kind of operating under the auspices that I was not going to have one again. I was kind of one of those where I felt like I'd kind of shot my load, pun intended. And, so I just wanted to go out and be irresponsible because I wasn't in my younger days. It's not something I'm ashamed of, and I've talked about it pretty readily. I was a virgin until I was 26. And it was one of those things, like, I wore it as a badge of honor. I actually chose that. I was somebody who really, prized my sexuality. And I wasn't meaning I was frigid. I was with a lot of people and would do things to them and would not allow them to reciprocate, which, drives a lot of people insane because control in a sexual relationship is a big thing.
So you would say that you were voluntarily
Yes, I was
celibate.
not one of the, incel motherfuckers. I chose, and it was specific. It was worse for me because then the second they'd leave the house, I'd go and, masturbate 14 times. So tell me what sense that makes. So I regretted a lot of my approaches when I got older. So by the time I had reached this state, I had had a couple other subsequent relationships, one of which John was alluding to earlier. So at the point where I met this young woman, I was very well debauched, and I had reached a state where, here's the context. The individual was a bartender at a local venue that we had been at. I had seen her there, and we'd had a really bizarre exchange where she had harangued me for ordering water while the rest of my bandmates were all ordering alcohol. So we started off very auspiciously. Then I wound up seeing her on a dating site, and it was OkCupid. So there's a lot of sort of requisite information that is included there. And she said that she was, a non-functioning alcoholic, which as a bartender, that somewhat stands to reason. Don't get high on your own supply.
Amen.
she basically was one of those, like, on OkCupid, you have selections for what you want, and you can get the Tinder function of saying, I'm basically just here to have, to be filled in like a tax form. And that was essentially what the conception was for her profile, is that she was mostly there to get down, and she was, taking all comers, pun intended. So I, having remembered that exchange, sent her a message, and it was my normal, I, as opposed to John, had a very long-winded approach. Like, I would write paragraphs of material, because I was like, everybody gets that, hey, baby, won't see this dick. So my approach on a dating site was sort of overwhelm them with trying to be charming, and to wit, this person's name for me in their phone was The Charmer, which is a lot of fun.
Oh.
And so we started having some discourse back and forth. This is one of the most depraved and bizarre human beings I have ever had the privilege or displeasure of speaking with. So, the story I told previously, she asked if I were to start seeing her, if I would freeze my semen into popsicles so that she could have it on tap just whenever she wanted it, so that she could consume it.
Important questions.
And, I, at this point, am, like, saying I'm in my early 30s. I'm pretty far down the rabbit hole. So I was like, I'm just going to follow this to the dismal end. I just want to see how far down the rabbit hole we can get. And so I was just feeding into all of this with the most, bizarre and disgusting answers I could. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll add food coloring. Do you want me to put, any particular flavors? Do you want, like, pinas colada? Is that what you're looking for? Like,
I want strawberry.
How do you want me to add to this? And so we had a very long exchange, and she kept putting off meeting me, and I was kind of, you feel rather bizarre about that, but apparently the reason being is she said she got fucked up in her fight club. Now, I'm going to restate that for the record. This woman took part in a fight club. She also did not fight individuals of her own gender. To her credit, she fought men. And she said the reason she enjoyed this is that she loved the dichotomy, and she was very well spoken. I will give her a lot of credit. She read a lot of philosophy. She was very articulate and was interesting to talk to. But she said she enjoyed the dichotomy of individuals wanting to fuck her, not being able to, and then beating the shit out of her instead.
It does sound like a Palahniuk plot point.
Yes. Now, if you tell me that this person is a therapy session waiting to happen, I will tell you yes, and this proves out. So eventually, she sends me pictures of her face, and yes, she got the shit beaten out of her. She had really, like, her lips were very severely damaged, and she had a shiner. Like, half of her face was discolored because it was black and blue. Like, it was really bad. So we put off meeting for, like, a month. And by this time, like, I was dating other people, I'd seen other people, and so I kind of cycled through. It was like, this is a back burner thing, and it's not really going to happen, so I was mostly just doing it to entertain myself. And she started sending me lurid photographs like you do, and I was not opposed to receiving those, so I kept feeding the monkey, expecting that, eventually something was going to happen. And then we wound up going out. And she confessed to me she enjoys guys of my stature, and so she was really excited about seeing me. The implication being I was going to get laid, regardless of however the date was going to go. I was basically going in for sex.
It's just a home run no matter what. Like, you could show up in sweatpants, and it would probably be the better move.
Right.
Like,
now, unfortunately, me being me, I was at work and then went to the date immediately after. So I'm wearing a polo shirt tucked into my khakis and, like, my dress shoes. And so I look like business casual. She is wearing the Julia Roberts outfit from the opening sequence of Pretty Woman. Like, she looks like she is basically walking out to try to get a John for the evening. So the entire time we spend together, I look like I have just picked her up and I'm, taking her around under the auspices of getting my money's worth. So that was awkward enough. And then, because she was a functioning alcoholic, she started drinking at sundown. That was not a joke, and since we're on the werewolf discussion for this episode, it's appropriate. She started drinking at sundown, and there was nothing that was going to interrupt that, so I had to take her to a liquor store. It was a drive-through liquor store. Now, I've never had a drink in my life. I've discussed this previously, so you can imagine the exchange is I did not know what to order. So it's like, how do you get these things? She's like, I want Jack Daniels. I was like, well, how do they serve it? Does I order like a large? Like, what do you? I was like, I don't understand what I'm gonna order. So she gave me a size, and I think it was what Do you remember, John? Because
It was
I
7.
A
handle. So
handle?
like there's a
or a fifth.
a fifth.
It's 750.
So I got her.
Okay. Because it's a fifth of a gallon.
Okay, so I got her a fifth
Yeah.
of Jack Daniels. And I ordered it from this, glorious Pakistani gentleman at this drive-through liquor store. And I said, I will take a fifth of your finest James Daniels, please. And he was not amused with me at all. So we proceed to then go and sit in a park where children are playing soccer around us. And she drank that thing in 45 minutes. Now, she's
Yeah.
telling me stories
So-
What
this
a woman.
entire time.
So there's context too, because Shane.
What context does there need to
Well,
be?
the context is that Shane, much like he, was celibate by choice, he's also sober by choice as well.
Right.
And like as he
Oh.
mentioned, so
Fair. Yeah.
to us, we know, and I mean Shane, but drinking that amount in that amount of time definitely screams alcoholic. It's different. It's like a different thing is like when Shane and I hung out at his apartment, like writing, where it's like, oh, I have like 2 or 3 beers in the whole course of the evening, as opposed to if I showed up with a fifth of Jack, and then by the end of the first hour that we are hanging out, I've killed a fifth. That's a different mindset and a different kind of person.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can, like, I usually go with the analogy of a shot is about equivalent to a beer. I would probably say closer, like, depending on the beer, but like something like a Coors Light or something like that. A shot is like a beer in that case. So you're drinking a lot of shots, which is a lot of beer.
So she does this, and then she promptly doesn't pass out or
In-
start throwing around
in
big
public, which is the worst part. Like, honestly, I would say, or not the worst part, but it definitely doesn't help. Like, you're doing that in public. Where we're not in Vegas, you can't.
The difficult aspect of
really
this is
do
that,
that.
like, yes, my ignorance is showing because I have no idea, one, how concentrated it is. I'm, everybody, I hear Jack Daniels, but I don't have any frame of reference for the effect
Right.
it will have on you. I don't know alcohol content in any of the
I
shit.
think your perspective changes on those things when you are participating. Of like, I know the one time that I had half a bottle of Jack and I threw up, and that's why I don't drink Jack, or
Right.
like those kind of stories. But you don't have that. You don't have
Yep.
that personal frame of reference.
Yes, all I have is the I think the Joe Rogan and Dave Attell bit of like Jack Daniels makes you time travel because you're drinking, you pass out, you wake up, you're doing one thing, you drink and you pass out. So anyway, after we finish this, she implores me to make a rock angel with her because there is a big giant pile of gravel, and she just lies down onto it and starts doing that, and I'm like, she's trying to pull me down. She's like, make a rock angel with me. It's like, fuck you. This is ridiculous. No.
As is tradition in the summers in Phoenix.
Yes. I was like, I'm wearing my work clothing, one. And so she's like, oh, you got balls. That's sexy. She's like, let's fuck. So now the important thing to context, like, I'm sorry, it's such a long-winded story.
No,
like, I
you're
can't.
beautiful.
She was telling me that her mother was her psychiatrist and she had slept with her previous boyfriend who she met while she was in rehab. So the both of them were going through the program. Like, there's a lot of this, and she said she had to see her mother because she started having dreams about having sex with her brother. And she
Roll Tide.
was turned on by these things. And again, me, being me, I'm straight-faced going through this like, oh, yeah, well, naturally, yeah, incest is the best. And so
I'd fuck my
he
brother.
looks
Yeah.
like feeding into the machine the entire time going like, I need to see how far we're going to go with this because I think she's joking. Like, she's just trying to be incendiary. We were both Palahniuk fans. Like, I'm thinking this is a character she's making up, basically, and her persona that she's giving me is this. And this is actually this woman. So as we're going over, she wants to get more alcohol. So then I have to stop. And I go into a gas station and buy 2 IPAs that she insisted that I have to get. I forget what they were, but they were sizable.
and
so
consequential,
it's the cans.
Yeah.
I watched 2 individuals having an argument at the cash register because the gentleman was dyed-in-the-wool redneck American who is, unfortunately, the individual working the register was a Muslim. And they were having a screaming argument with one another, and he was telling him to go back to his own country where the camels are, etc. Like, so I'm already freaked out from that, and I get back in the car, and she's not coherent anymore. She's ceased to be in touch with reality, but she's insisting that I need to, copulate with her. So I'm going, no, I think I'm going to take you home. And she knows I used to be a security guard, so she's like, stop being a fucking pig. Just take me home and fuck me. And it's like, no, I think I'm going to stop. So I keep trying to extricate myself from this, and she just keeps escalating. And so then you get to a point where I'm like, well, listen, my rational thought is out the window at this point. And I'm like, if I've gone through all this work already and she's game to have sex, basically she's not going to be coherent at all. So she'll probably pass out by the time I make it home. Or if we do have sex, it's going to be quick. So, I'll just kind of run through this. And as we're going through my neighborhood, she's pointing out like, oh, I know this area. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, why? She's like, oh, I used to break into the houses over here when I was on heroin.
Oh my God. So I'm like, not what I was expecting, but
like, oh, this is fun. So now I'm terrified because it's like, okay, well, I'm definitely not. I don't want to take her to my house at this point. And so it's the real Sophie's choice of like, how do I get out of this? Then we get into my complex and she's like, oh, I used to fuck a guy in that building right here. So like, it just keeps getting worse. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, you want to, hit him up? Cause I'm not really into this at this point. So you can go ahead and call him. She's like, oh, no, we stopped hanging out for a while. Cause the last time he fucked me, he pulled out of me. And as he was pulling out, I was like, you should probably get tested. Like every conceivable bad trigger just falls out of this woman's mouth, and this continues to happen. So we get into my house, we do not have sex. She's basically trying to engage me in every way that she can. So it's like she's taking her top off, but she's so drunk that she can't really function. So then she's like, we should make out, and she kisses me twice, and then she's like, I hate kissing.
You're like, well, it wasn't my fucking idea.
Right. So basically, I just lift her off of me, put her down. I was like, get your shit. We're going to go. Like, I'm done. And she's like, you're kidding me. So, I also forget to contextualize. As we're walking up the stairs to go into my place, which John will remember, I had to go upstairs from my garage to get into my townhouse.
Yeah.
She was not wearing underwear. So, I'm following her up the stairs. I'm like, oh, God. Okay, here we go. So, like, the whole evening just escalated in all the wrong ways. So I get her back out of my house, and she is staggeringly drunk. So she insisted on finishing one of the IPAs before I took her out. So she's now had a full IPA and the Jack Daniels, and she's working on the other one. So I'm like, well, I'm not driving with an open container, so fuck that shit. She's like, okay, well, I'm going to finish it. So now she then drinks that one as we're standing in my garage, and she's still haranguing me like, why don't you just have sex with me? It's like, so this continues. I'll save a lot of the other escalation. I drive her home. The neighborhood I picked her up from was somewhat unsavory, okay? As I get there, I picked her up during the daytime. It is now night. All of the lights are broken on her street. They have busted out all the street lights. So I can't see anything. Like a ghetto
Dumbledore just came through and just smashed every one of those motherfuckers.
The Dumbledore made a very strong point to just, destroy this neighborhood. So I can't find the house numbers. And I don't know where I'm dropping her off. So I'm driving up and down this street, and I'm seeing all of like the joyful signs that I, as a weird, shorn-headed Caucasian man, should not be here, because there's all, like the sneakers are thrown over the, power lines and shit, and there's tags on the corners, and I'm like, this isn't going to end well.
We can just say Sunny Slope. It's fine.
Yeah, pretty much. No, this was, I can tell you specifically, I remember, because it was 51st Ave and Peoria.
Yeah?
No, it was 47th Avenue in Peoria. So, yeah, you can imagine. So, as I'm, like, trying to find her house, I'm terrified, because it's like, this is not going to be fun. And finally, I've made the past 3 or 4 times looking at the address she sent me, because I know I found her there. And finally, I pull over, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to walk up and down the block and try to find this house. And as I'm doing this, then she starts rolling down my window and screaming at me. She had passed out in the car on the way back, so I finally had a modicum of silence. But now she was woken up, and she's yelling at me that she wants to, take parts of my anatomy inside of her very loudly in the middle of this neighborhood. So I'm like,
so she's like fucking, she's Reagan, like,
or she's Dana from Ghostbusters of like, I want you inside of me. So as I get back, I go, I'm done. Like, I'm sick of this shit. So I go to get her out of my car, and I open the door and like, you need to get out. She refuses to get out. So then I'm physically pulling her out of my car, and she screams bloody murder. Now, this is also great because as I notice this, across the street are 4 very unsavory looking individuals who are watering a patch of mud. There's no grass in their front yard. There are no plants in their front yard. They are just pouring water onto dirt. And all of them are staring at me. So one of them comes over and tries to ask, he's like, who is this? Is like, oh, this is, and like, oh, is it Jebby's boy? And I'm like, boy? He's like, oh, is it this person's daughter? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. I'm not her A&E biographer. I'm just trying to get her home. Do you recognize her? Do you know where she lives? It's like, oh, I have no idea who she is. I was like, well, cool. And mind your own fucking business.
Good talk, champ.
So he goes across
bro.
the street, and I'm trying to help her up. And she's pulling on my belt. Because, again, I have my shirt tucked into my pants. So she's trying to take my pants off in the middle of the street, and I try to pull her hands off of my belt to get her, and she falls away from me, and her head hits the concrete, and I swear to Christ, it sounds like dropping a watermelon onto concrete. Like, blood is running out of her ears at this point, and I'm like, I've just killed this woman by accident. She is laying dead in the middle of the street. Now, she's got bruises all over her because she's in a fucking fight club. So it looks like I just beat the holy hell out of this drunk woman, abused her, took her home, and she's just laying bleeding in the street. So I've lost my shit.
It's 100% like the things that are just stranger than fiction.
And also because I have a mother who worked for attorneys her entire life and has made me paranoid, I'm like, this is how I get arrested. Because there's no one who's going to believe that I didn't have sex with her unless they swab her. Like, there's no one who's going to believe I didn't do any of this to her and that I didn't ply her with drinks to get her to
I was
going
to
to
say, like, also you
dangerous.
are stone cold sober. She
Correct.
is 130,000% on the other end of the spectrum.
Right. And it's like I have text messages and things going back and forth, and like I can indicate that we were at least friendly, but this is how people get into serious trouble. So I'm terrified at this point, and a lot of this is justifiably so. I got myself into this situation. So this isn't a pity me, it's just context is really important. So I go up and down the street. I'm trying to find her place. It's really difficult. And finally, I find the house number. So I go up and I knock on the front door. She is still laying in the sidewalk, by the way. So great call on my part. So the door opens and there is a pack of dogs. So they have a shit ton of German shepherds that are all running around in the house. And the guy opens the door and steps out to me. He's got a swastika tattooed above his heart on his chest, shorn-headed. And I'm like, this young lady I'm with is admittedly, she is half Hispanic and half Russian. So I'm like, I don't know how this is jiving with this guy's perspective, but I'm like,
I don't understand your ideology, sir.
I was like, I want to talk to you about your choice of roommates if this is how you feel. The National Socialist movement really, does not go in for this. So I mentioned, hey, I have this individual down the street. She's really intoxicated, and I'm trying to make sure I get her home. Can you help me get her and collect her? Because she's fighting me at this point. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, again? Okay.
Again?
Yeah. So he's like, okay, give me a second. So he is also intoxicated. So now I'm walking his drunk ass down the street to where she's lying, and she is now in someone's yard pulling their grass up by the handful. Like she's my grandfather on weekend leave. Okay. Like, and the entire time, like, the thing resounding in my head is like, this is how I get arrested. This is how all this is going to go down. And then worse off is I'm blue-balled because I was already expecting that I was going to have some sort of release here. And so, like, I'm in a great mood. So as we're trying to pick her up, she's not lucid and she's having difficulties and she's throwing mud and all this other nonsense. And so she's falling down. We're trying to get her collected. And across the street, the jackasses yell, "Put her in the fucking car, you idiots." So I then leave her, go around the side, and I'm basically like, I'm going to put you in the fucking ground if you open your mouth again. And I'm yelling again at people in a neighborhood that I am not familiar with. The wisest move ever. So I'm having a screaming argument with these rednecks that are watering their mud. Go back over there, and the guy's like, really, can we put her in your car? I was like, it took me 20 minutes to get her out of my car. Now, to give further context, I have been with this woman in this spot now for an hour. Because I was trying to get her out of my car for 20 minutes.
Jesus fuck.
Like, this has gotten exponentially bad. So again, compressing all of this stuff to try to make it palatable, and we're not here for 2.5 hours. But finally, like, it took me a long time to get her out of the car. He's like, I will get her out of your car, I promise. Like, I know you're trying to be decent here, so it's like, whatever we can do.
He's giving you an out. Like, he's like, do this, and I'll do this for you. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
So, we get her, and, he drags her out of the car by her fucking hair and beats her up in the front yard. No. No, I'm kidding. So I put her in the car, and as I'm walking around, like, I get in, and she is cackling maniacally. Like, blood running out of her nose. She still has a little bit welled up in her ear, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She's like, I'm such a cunt.
No, I think that one has to stay because it's the story.
The punchline, as we'll get to. So I'm like, yeah, honey, you are. I'm afraid. Like, this has been one of the worst nights of my life. So thank you. It's been a pleasure. Please lose my fucking number. So I drive her up to the car, and we're going to get her out. And she actually, like, this is what really cheeses me. Opens the door, stands up, and like walks out. Didn't need any help. She perfectly stands up, and then she starts to stumble. So the bravado was there for a second, and then the bravura nature kind of lost, and she fell into the guy's arms, and he's carrying her to the door.
They probably went back inside and ate burgers wrapped in lettuce.
God, I hope so. So as I'm walking up to the door, she's grabbing at me again, but she's trying to claw my face, which is really awesome. And at this point, he's like, I think she wants you to come in. I was like, I think it's quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. And so he opens the door, and he starts yelling German commands at these fucking dogs.
Oh my God.
And they're still scattering all around. There had to be at least 8 of them. So, and they're not small dogs. So she sees the animals, and she goes, oh, wait, sorry. I lost the punchline. God damn it. Anyway. As we're walking up to the door, she's clawing at my face. He's saying I should help her, and he's like, trying to coax me. And I'm like, no, I think she means the opposite. And she says the line that I will hold with me until I go in the ground. She turns to him and slurs out. She goes, he didn't come in my cunt. He's not going to come in my house.
Also, you are in a very, very strange and precarious situation when a woman like whole hog refers to her pussy as a cunt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where she's like that's her normal like set, and anything else is derogatory. Like, I don't know. I just
it's the old adage of, how is anyone else going to respect you if you don't respect yourself? Yeah. Is this so? This woman was not a feminist. I'm gonna just put that out on the record. No. I'm sure that we'll just escape unscathed with that. Because
I wish that you could say her nickname.
I was gonna say I'm gonna avoid that at all costs. But yes, I'll tell Michael off air.
Can I say the back half of it?
No. It's you can find
just tell me
it.
off camera.
You can very easily manage your way through this. So
okay.
Just tell me off
in any
camera,
event, she then turns and stumbles into the house and goes, dogs, and does what Tony did that one night when we took him home drunk. She tried to fall on top of the dogs, and they all moved out of the way. So then she just hit the floor again.
And she passed out, and she bled to death. She is no longer with us.
Yeah, she's dead. She is shuffled loose of the mortal coil.
She's fucking dead now.
Good night, sweet princess.
So, as I'm then like trying to nail the dismount here of being like a trying to be a decent human being, the guy's walking me out, and I was like, I do the Patton Oswalt. I'm like, beastly sorry to interrupt your evening. I, just wanted to make sure that she made it home safe. I didn't want to just leave her abandoned on the side of the road somewhere. And he's like, dude, this happens all the time. And turns, just slams the door in my face.
At this point, you're like, why am I sympathizing more with the guy with the fucking Nazi symbol on his chest than I am with anyone else in this story? We're like, fucking guy.
Seriously.
Like, I had this one horrible night. This is like a blip in his like cosmos.
His life.
It's like all of a sudden Edward Norton from like American History X has got to live with this woman on the day in and day out. Like, so I go back, get in my car, and shudder and lose my mind. But yeah, that was the climax of the evening, and I didn't get to. There was no ejaculation in the climax at all. That was ghastly, and that basically put me off of dating for a good long while afterwards until I met the lovely woman who I'm with now, who is a sweetheart and a dramatic contrast in every way, shape, and form.
And if she has made it to the end of the story, I think she earns a gold star.
Indeed, she's heard this story multiple times because I make a point of telling it, one, as a cautionary tale, but also I attempt to try to show the lengths to which my depravity ran, and and even then, the story didn't end the way that I imagine a horrible person's would have, which is like, yeah, I banged her a couple times, drag her down the stairs, and threw her out in the alley behind my apartment, and just forgot she was there. Yeah. So I put her in an Uber. It's like I took her home. I wanted to make sure she was okay.
Uber wasn't even really hyper accessible back then.
I mean, this is probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, so it wasn't so distantly removed. But yeah, it was kind of in the nascent stages of gaining popularity. But yeah.
Well, what this really exemplifies is like where you and I both were during that time. Mm-hmm. And we've said the expression, and it should just go on the t-shirt already, or at least have someone commission it and just throw it up on the podcast page or whatever.
Oh my goodness. Podcast merch.
You can't fuck crazies with impunity. Or try to fuck crazies with impunity.
Fine point.
I feel like you threw a big enough net into the waters that you just caught like all like the hangers on, like we both did, but God, that story in particular is just like, you don't want to play one up on that one.
No, that was a very deep eddy to try to endure.
You were shook. Fuck, you were so shook.
It was not a good time.
I think it was.
I mean, who wouldn't
right?
be?
I think it was like a day or two later that we all saw you at practice, and you were like, "We're like, how's your week been?"
I've seen some
when
shit.
We've talked about it before. It's like we ask you how your week has been, and we do genuinely care, but all of a sudden it's just like, fuck, you guys are the only ones that are gonna care about this shit, and you just have to let it all out. And we're setting up for practice, and it's like, hold on, we're more interested in this. Like, we need to finish this fucking story before we do anything musical here, because there's something.
Dude, and it was a Tuesday night. Like, it wasn't even a weekend. Like,
Oh, so you went into work the next day, probably still like.
And we didn't even get into like the Zia records and the Bookmans of it all. Like the whole, the evening was a saga. There is a lot of build up before we even got to the alcohol. So it's nuts.
So maybe I'll just call upon you at random times if we need more content. Be like, hey, tell me about so and so. Yeah, give me this chapter.
Give me chapter 2
of your saga. It's like the Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
basically. We got to start with, so here's the second installation.
I feel like I've been ending a lot of these episodes, actually probably a string of them now, by saying thank you and sorry to Michael.
Yes.
So that's all par for the course here. But also, I'm an idiot, and I don't remember if we have anything planned for next week as far as topics. Do you guys have something that you're working on? What are we looking at next week?
Yes. So I actually did a lot of research. This will actually probably be a decently long episode, but it will be filled with hilarity. I want to talk about the Scopes trial, specifically because I just want to say the actual title. It is the State of Tennessee versus John Thomas Scopes, which is commonly referred to as the Scopes monkey trial.
Now, my only hesitation here is I will share the same perspective that I did on the previous version. Is at some point are we going to let the evolution topic breathe for a moment, or are we just going to keep beating that dead horse?
Oh, honestly, like the best part about this is that it's not really. It doesn't really cover too much. There's like a little bit that actually talks about evolution and stuff like that, but a lot of it is just a media circus. Like it's media sensationalism at its core, and it's gaming the system.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here that we are not just going to continue to dogpile on creationists and keep
even though they
putting
fucking
their head in the
deserve
water.
it.
No, it honestly doesn't dog on any. It only dogs on the people involved, not any particular group. Yeah, but this is almost like my swan song for it, because I don't want to touch it for a while.
Well, it's very sore, so I imagine you need to give it a little reprieve.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I think that with that, we have almost reached the point where you could conceivably make this a 2-part episode, and you would be able to endure. So.
Honestly, I thought about it because it's split right in the middle. Like, we talk about the movies for the first hour, and the second hour we talked about awkward sex things, so we could honestly make it a two-parter.
I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world.
It would give us
considering.
time to give a good amount of effort to your fanfic.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to just put these out.
Yeah.
I guess we're off record right now, but put one out next week and the following the one after, and then dive back into pure topics, whatever you want to do.
You know, I
Yeah, I'll
it is
I'll
nice
think
to have
about
a
it.
buffer, but at the same time, you know, we've kind of enjoyed being topical. The reason that I say that is because we can actually say on the record, if we keep this intact, that on April 17th, our new single's coming out, and everyone can brace for impact on that. So that was one of the benefits of us having this, you know, within the regional time frame. But if we do not keep it intact, that is a moot point, and we are not going to be able to really dive in unless it's, you know, close to that.
I mean, it would probably be released next week, and then we would just be releasing like I don't know. Well, I'll think about it. I'll see how
Okay.
I feel in the morning.
But
when I start
think,
editing
you know,
it.
We haven't figured out whether or not our audience is game to hang in for 2 hours of us talking. I'm sure they are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably not outside the realm of possibility, but then, you know, it
I mean, if you're already signed up,
much...
you sign up and you do the me approach, which is you watch half the movie at night and you finish it in the morning.
Yeah,
So, in
it's
fact,
reasonable.
all of my Kingslinger podcasts and Your Mom's House and Last Pod, like they all are pretty lengthy on the runtime, but I ended up enjoying that because since it's only one episode per week, like I don't feel guilty starting and then stopping, checking back in, or like making a meal of it.
And personally, I love long podcasts. If I see something that's like 2 or 3
Same.
hours, I get excited by the possibility. So I don't want to deprive anybody of that.
I vote
I'm
aye
just,
for one long ass episode.
All right. If it saves, I'll go with that as well. So, April 17th, ladies and germaphobes, is going to be the new Damn the Weather single. Frightened Rabbit will be out, so we hope you enjoy that. Michael
Yes.
will be dead by then, so it'll just be 2/3 of this podcast going on.
Off myself. Go commit, die.
I mean, if you must.
Ask Asher
I
if he
must,
can help
I
you. You
shall.
guys can do like a suicide pact. He's been begging for one of those for years, so...
Ooh. Don't
And
tempt
we're
me
mostly
with a good
done with our
time.
concept, so if he's going to kill himself, this is the time to do it. I mean, we're right on the cusp of, you know, being able to start fresh. So, you should have laughed at that, John.
I'll
I'm
reach
sorry.
out.
That was funnier than you gave me credit for, you son of a bitch.
He was on his phone.
I was looking at the calendar to make sure that April 17th is when I thought it was. So even though I'm the one who set up the fucking release, so like I plugged all the dumb shit in.
Well
But-
played.
Well, thanks for indulging my stories, guys, and thank you for watching those movies. I'm gonna watch The Ninth Gate by next week, and I'll
I
check
even
in.
read Old Man Logan in preparation
You did
for this,
indeed.
basing for Michael watching the film that we assigned him, and so
Well, we'll just have him do the same. Like,
Just makes me think of school. Just letting everyone down.
don't forget your
Great.
parents.
And this is why I
Never
don't
do.
feel bad at all about you now getting to edit 2 hours worth of podcast, because that's what you get for not doing your homework, you son of a bitch.
Well, then it,
Yep, see, the
fine.
cycle
Okay.
perpetuates
Well,
itself.
You made your bed. Now you're gonna have to
And I'm Michael.
eat the iceberg out of it.
No, you've
Clean it
made
up.
your bed, and now you need to go pick somebody up off the side of the road and not return to it for a good long while. 'cause
And
you
and
can't
have him call
tell
you daddy.
If you didn't climax in this,
Go get a lolly. Well, thank
Please?
you, ladies and germaphobes, for enduring what was very likely an awkward and bizarre episode. But we appreciated you hanging out, and we hope that you're still enjoying the freeform episodes that just sort of spew screaming whelped into existence from us. If you are enjoying what you are hearing here, please like, subscribe, and if you dig what we do, rate and review. We always appreciate someone giving a little feedback, and it helps to get us into people's searches a little more readily, so that will help out to spread the word and spread the joy. And you should do so as well if you like us. Tell your friends, tell your family. Have your mom listen once and then disown you. It'll be really marvelous.
Yeah, Shane
But,
can have sex with her.
If only. You can then find us on the social networks. At Instagram, we are at Disinformed Podcast. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Disinformed Podcast. And on Twitter, at Disinformed Pod. You can also find us on YouTube. We have a playlist that we update when the podcast platform provider we utilize uploads. We are also on Stitcher as well, so you can find us there. We are missing episode 32 on YouTube, unfortunately. That did not get uploaded there, so the second half of our discussion of this dreaded disease that's floating about these days did not make it up there. So if you want to hear that, you got to find it online other than YouTube. But yeah, bless those Podbean people. They tried. But I believe with that, we are going to bring this. I can give it another minute and a half and actually get us to 2 hours on the nose.
We'll get there.
Well, nah, I mean, honestly, there will be some cut down because remember, we didn't start recording immediately. I mean, like, the clap and...
All right, well, we'll get, just shy of 2 glorious hours worth of material here, but there's that awkward foreplay that we were talking about earlier. For the very long-winded Disinformed podcast, I am Sergeant Hatred.
Datacado.
Captain Technology.
No.
And?
You are...
But she's 6'9", 6'9", 6'9".
Please find him any way that you can. And thank you for coming, or in my case, not coming. Don't worry. Someone's going to clean